It's part one of our conversation with Greg Godovitz. I'm John Beaudin from Rock History Canada. Greg has done so much for Canadian music, and he knows so many international artists. It's amazing the stories he tells. He wrote these two books. We'll have links in the description where you can pick them up. It's amazing his history in music, being an early member of the band Flood. Then, of course, his solo stuff and Goddo. Here's our conversation with Greg Godovitz. With Rick Lee of 10 Years After, and I asked him, obvious question. I'm going, well, you obviously knew Keith Moon really well, and you knew that probably comes up in your interviews now and then. And he says, yeah, of course I did. I said, well, I'm going to have to ask you, were you really surprised that he died, just after the release of Who Are You? And he says, well, no, but when you're at it at the time, you don't really think you're going to die. I thought, what about you? Because you're like a Canadian version a little bit there. And what's going through your mind? Or are you just in the moment? You don't think about that?
Well, there was always, some sort of chemical imbalance involved, some thing that took over that said, oh, you'll be okay. I mean, just while the guy's driving and falling asleep, open up the back window and crawl out onto the roof and then knock on the windscreen, Why the guy didn't slam on the brakes and have me go flying, I don't know what. And I started doing that in England when we were at Richard Branson's manor with Flood. We had a Rolls Royce and a Bentley at our disposal. So we'd go down to the Jolly Boatman pub every day. And I would come back on the roof of the Rolls Royce and they'd try to shake me off, and it's funny because the girls at the manor said, there's a guy that lives in the area that you have to meet. And it was Keith Moon. He said, you and him would get along fantastic, but he was on tour. So I never got the chance to meet him. But they said, when I left there, they put a plaque on the door of the room I stayed in and called it the Flood Room in honor of all the stuff that I got up to, including burning, a piece of Mike Oldfield's score for Tubular Bells. I actually did that right in front of him as a laugh. He didn't laugh as loud as I did, but...
By the way, what's the part about Cat Stevens thinking that you had been part of what the Pilling Brothers had done, where when you met him, he was, what was that part?
Oh, yeah. Well, he was playing, he was huge at this time. He was headlining at Massey Hall. And Skip Prokop from Lighthouse called me up and said, I got a pair of tickets. I can't go. Do you want to go with my wife, Marcia, to the gig? And I went, yeah, great. So knowing that Brian and Ed had played with Cat Stevens from Flood, and I didn't because I was only 50 and I couldn't go to England. My parents wouldn't let me go to England, but they went and they ended up in his band. Now, I didn't know that the Selmer PA equipment and stuff that they brought back from England happened to be Cat's property. So I sent them this naive little letter going, hey, I play with the Pilling Brothers and I would have been in your band. And somebody came and got me and Marcia after the show and brought us back. And he's holding court in a very packed dressing room. And he says, are you the guy that sent this letter? I said, yeah. He goes, they're not my friends, man. And proceeded to tear a strip off me. And I said, I didn't do anything to you. I mean, why are you yelling at me, Yeah. But, it's that old adage, never meet your heroes. And he was, one of those guys that fall under that category,
Well, there's always, but when anyone would die to give their life, to have lived the type of life you have. And then the good thing is, I didn't know you were writing a third book, which makes me really happy because as soon as we're finished this, I'm downloading the first book. And
it's too bad you didn't read that one first because even though they're not sort of chronological, the first book is chronological because I had 40 years of diaries. I had
You did?
I kept a diary for 40 years every day. And it's funny because sometimes on the road, there would be, a guest, and I would dictate and the girl would write and I'm reading the diary and she goes, this guy is a complete, idiot, he's not getting nothing, and I read that in my book, I was laughing when I was reading this stuff, but I kept it. And then I had all newspaper. I kept everything. My archives are in the University of Toronto right now. And they said, we'd never seen a more comprehensive, I kept everything. The very first blurb in the newspaper I've got, and I've got the first business card for the Pretty Ones, which was 1964.
Yeah, pre-flood. Wow.
Yeah, I kept everything, and then people keep sending me stuff. And now, of course, because of Facebook and that, every day I get something, a picture that I've never seen before of some goofy thing that we're doing. And it's one, I mean, I love social media because of that, you know? Yeah.
You were 13 in 64. I mean, what kind of a kid were you?
That's what I tried. Like when you read my story in the new book called The Sinister Scoutmaster, that was I'm actually the Gilbert character. I just didn't want to give myself that name. But I managed to escape this psycho scoutmaster that we went away with. We had a little pact amongst the troop members going, do we tell our parents about this guy? No, he's way too, for an adult, he's way too much fun to go away with. Because if he caught you, he would hang you upside down over a fire and poke you with sticks. I mean, this guy was a psycho, you know? My brother read it. He says, why didn't you tell Dad about this guy? So because Dad would have killed him. You know, I mean, he never molested me or anything. So I escaped that little aspect. But so I realized in my first book, there was very little about my real boyhood, because at 13, my childhood went away. I was instantly playing. I mean, at 13, the Pillings and I were playing at an after hours club on Yonge Street, starting at 1 o'clock in the morning. So I went from being, you know, a 99.8 average in grade 8 to 49.8 in grade 9. And my mother took it with a pinch of salt, but my dad was just like, how can this be? How can you drop 50 points? You know, you're not stupid. I said, no, I'm focused. I want to be a musician. That's what I want to be. So instead of going to class, I would be in the auditorium. I'd have a spotlight put on me. I would have an acoustic guitar, and I would pretend that the auditorium was full of people. And I was working on my craft at 13, you know, because when I did my first book tour, we didn't even have product in the stores. I mean, it was a complete fiasco.
Yeah, by the way, I remember reading that. Why? Because you didn't sell, you said you didn't sell at the end of it. So what happened?
Well, the record company, or the company that put the book out, didn't have the stuff printed in time. We'd already booked the tour, and we'd set out advance copies, but so they got hard copies, the TV and stuff. I could always tell when somebody had not even opened the book. And then they'd say, well, what's the story about? And I go, I'd make something up. And the guy would go, oh, I like that story. I said, yeah, well, actually it's not in the book, but you didn't even open it up. So I'd call him on it. You know, and I swore that when I got in that position, I would have the respect for the person that put in the time, because I know how much time you put in to write a book. It's a lot of time. It's like writing a 400-page song, you know? So I had great respect. And the word got out pretty fast that there's this guy in Toronto that has a radio show that you have to do. So pretty soon, like the biggest writers in the world, I had them on the show talking about their Elvis book or whatever the heck it was, you know. And I made a point. I mean, I'm impressed with you, my friend, because you read my book. I can tell you read the book, you know.
Yeah.
So
we'll have more from Greg Godovitz in the next 3-4 days. Make sure you comment on our videos, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos, and buy a Rock History Canada t-shirt. Help support our channel. I'm John Beaudin. Take care of yourself.